I'm Ethan, 34, living in Phoenix, Arizona. I work full-time as a software developer for a mid-sized tech company downtown. 3 years of saving and careful budgeting finally paid off last year when I bought my Toyota Camry brand new from the dealership. It wasn't the luxury vehicle some of my colleagues drive, but it was mine, paid with my own hard-earned money, and I couldn't have been prouder. I've always been meticulous about maintaining my possessions. My car is no exception. I follow the maintenance schedule religiously, sometimes even taking it in earlier than recommended. The interior still has that subtle new car smell because I enforce a strict no-food policy. The exterior gets washed weekly, more frequently during those brutal Arizona dust storms. Some friends tease me about my relationship with my car, but I see it as respecting what I've worked hard to acquire. My wife, Rachel, understands my attachment to the car, though she occasionally rolls her eyes when I spend Saturday mornings detailing it. We've been married for 6 years, and while we generally share everything, we've always respected each other's personal belongings. Rachel drives her own Ford Focus, which she's had since before we met. Last month, Rachel's younger brother Kyle called us out of the blue. Kyle is 27, works as a bartender at a popular sports bar in Tempe, and has always been what my mother-in-law charitably calls free-spirited. In my private thoughts, I call it irresponsible. He's jumped from job to job, relationship to relationship, and seems to lurch from one minor crisis to another. "Hey man, I need a huge favor," Kyle said, his voice carrying that familiar tone that usually preceded an unreasonable request. "My car's transmission finally gave out. It's gonna be in the shop for at least 2 weeks, maybe 3. I made sympathetic noises while mentally cataloging the numerous times Kyle had mentioned problems with his ancient Honda Civic, problems he'd consistently ignored until they became catastrophic failures. "Anyway," he continued, "I was wondering if I could borrow your car. Just for the work commute. I can't afford to rent one for that long, and if I start missing shifts, Tony might replace me." My stomach tightened instantly. "Kyle, I don't know. Come on, it's not like I'm asking to take it on a road trip. Just Tempe and back, 5 days a week. I'll even fill it up before I return it each time." I took a deep breath. It's not just about gas. I'm really not comfortable with anyone else driving my car regularly. It's nothing personal. There was a pause on the line. "Seriously? It's just a car, Ethan. We're family. I know, and I want to help. Have you checked with your parents? Or maybe there's a coworker who lives nearby that you could carpool with." Kyle's voice cooled considerably. "Mom and Dad are visiting Aunt Susan in Oregon. They took their car. And I'm not close enough with anyone at work for that. What about ride sharing? If it's just for work, maybe. Do you know how much that would cost for 3 weeks? I'd be working just to pay for the rides." He sighed heavily. "Look, forget I asked. I'll figure something out." He hung up before I could respond. I stood in my living room, phone in hand, feeling that familiar mixture of guilt and frustration that often followed interactions with Kyle. That evening, Rachel came home from her nursing shift looking tired but immediately tensed when she saw my expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting down her purse. I explained Kyle's request and my refusal. She listened without interrupting, but I could see her features tightening. "Ethan, it's just for a few weeks. Would it really be such a big deal? It's not just about lending the car, Rachel. It's about Kyle's history. He's had 3 accidents in the last 4 years. One of which was clearly his fault because he was texting. That was a long time ago. He's more responsible now." I raised an eyebrow. "Is he? Last month he called you at 2 a.m. because he'd lost his wallet and needed gas money, remember?" Rachel sighed. "That could happen to anyone. Once, maybe. But with Kyle, it's always something." Our discussion was interrupted by Rachel's phone chiming with a text message. She glanced at it, frowned, then looked up at me with disappointment in her eyes. "It's Mom. Kyle called her. She showed me the message. Why is Ethan refusing to help Kyle when he's in need? Family is supposed to support each other." Very disappointed. My jaw tightened. "He called your parents? They're on vacation." Rachel looked uncomfortable. "You know how close Kyle and Mom are." Soon, my phone started buzzing with texts from Rachel's father, then her older sister Melissa. By the next morning, it seemed every member of Rachel's family had weighed in on my selfishness. The consensus was clear: I was not acting like a true member of the family. Over breakfast, Rachel tried to mediate. "Look, I know it feels like they're ganging up on you, but they just don't understand why this is such a big issue. From their perspective, it seems simple: Kyle needs help, you have something that could help him. And what about your perspective?" I asked quietly. She stirred her coffee, avoiding my eyes. "I see both sides. I understand why you're protective of your car, but..." She hesitated. "I also don't see what the big deal is about lending it for a couple of weeks. It would really help Kyle out." I set my coffee down harder than intended. "The big deal is that I'd be liable if anything happened. My insurance would take the hit. And given Kyle's track record, something happening isn't exactly a remote possibility." "You're catastrophizing." "Am I? The last time your brother borrowed something valuable, your dad's power tools for that construction job, half of them came back damaged, and the rest came back months later." Rachel pushed her plate away. "That's different. He needs the car to keep his job. And I need my car to keep my sanity," I replied. The conversation ended there, with neither of us happy. That night, I couldn't sleep. The weight of family disapproval hung heavy, and Rachel's cool politeness wasn't helping. Around midnight, I got up and posted anonymously on a popular Reddit forum. "AITA for refusing to lend my car to my brother-in-law for 3 weeks. He has a history of accidents and irresponsibility, but now my wife's entire family is calling me selfish." By morning, hundreds of responses had flooded in. The consensus was clear and reassuring: lending a car for that duration to someone with a spotty history was a significant risk, regardless of family ties. Many users shared horror stories of similar situations gone wrong: insurance nightmares, damaged relationships, and financial burdens that lasted long after the car lending was over. Armed with this validation, I approached Rachel as she prepared for her shift. "I've thought about it more," I began, "and I still don't feel comfortable lending Kyle my car. This isn't about not helping family. It's about setting reasonable boundaries." Rachel looked tired. "Ethan. No, please hear me out. If Kyle needed money for a rental car, I'd be willing to help with that. If he needed rides occasionally, I could arrange my schedule sometimes. But giving him unrestricted access to my car for weeks? That's different." She zipped up her scrubs jacket with unnecessary force. "So you're prioritizing your car over family harmony?" "I'm prioritizing reasonable boundaries over unreasonable expectations," I corrected gently. "And honestly, I'm disappointed that you're not supporting me more in this." Her eyes softened slightly. "It's not that simple for me. I'm caught in the middle." "I understand that. But think about it, if the situation were reversed, would your family be pressuring Kyle to lend me his car?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. The next day, things escalated. Rachel's mother called me directly, something she rarely did. Her usually warm voice was clipped and formal. "Ethan, I've always thought of you as a son. That's why I'm so confused by your behavior. Kyle is struggling right now, and you have the means to help him." I took a deep breath. "Linda, I respect you tremendously, but this situation isn't as simple as it seems. Kyle has a history that makes me uncomfortable lending him my car for such an extended period. We all make mistakes, Ethan. That's what forgiveness in a family is about. This isn't about forgiveness. It's about reasonable boundaries and responsibility. Linda's voice cooled further. I see. Well, I hope you'll reconsider what it means to be part of this family. The implied threat hung in the air, and for the first time, I felt a flash of anger breaking through my guilt. With all due respect, Linda, being family doesn't mean ignoring common sense or personal boundaries. I care about Kyle, but that doesn't obligate me to take on significant risk and liability. The silence that followed was arctic. I'm very disappointed in you, she finally said before hanging up. That evening, things came to a head when Kyle showed up at our door unannounced. Rachel let him in before I could object. Kyle looked between us, his expression a calculated mix of dejection and dignity. I just came to apologize for causing drama, he said, sounding anything but apologetic. I didn't realize asking for a small favor would turn into such a huge issue. I bit back my initial response. Kyle, it's not a small favor. It's lending my primary vehicle to someone with multiple accidents on their record for nearly a month. He flinched as if I'd struck him. Wow. Way to throw past mistakes in my face. Those accidents were years ago. The most recent one was 14 months ago, I corrected. Rachel shot me a warning look. Ethan, please. Kyle turned to his sister with wounded eyes. I get it now. He's never really seen me as family. Just the screw-up brother-in-law he has to tolerate. That's not true, I started, but Kyle was on a roll. You know what? Forget it. I'll figure it out myself, like I always do. I just thought. He let his voice trail off for maximum effect. I just thought family was supposed to have each other's backs. As he turned to leave, Rachel called after him. Kyle, wait. Maybe we can figure something out. He paused, and I saw the calculated glance he threw my way, a look that confirmed everything I'd suspected. This was manipulation, pure and simple. No, I said firmly. I'm sorry you're in a difficult situation, Kyle, but my answer stands. I'm not lending you my car. The door closed with deliberate softness behind him, somehow more dramatic than if he'd slammed it. Rachel and I barely spoke that night. The next morning, she left for an early shift without saying goodbye. By the end of the week, the situation had expanded beyond just Kyle and immediate family. Rachel's cousins were texting their opinions. Her aunt called to check in, but really to express disappointment in my decision. Even Rachel's best friend Miranda, who had never particularly liked Kyle, sent a message suggesting I was being a bit harsh. It felt like I was under siege in my own life. The only space where my position was validated was in that Reddit thread, where strangers continued to affirm the reasonableness of my boundaries. Sunday dinner at Rachel's parents' house, a tradition since we'd married, was conspicuously not mentioned that weekend. When I asked Rachel if we were expected, she shrugged. Mom said to give it a few weeks until things cool down. That night, I found Rachel sitting on our bed, scrolling through old family photos on her phone. Sometimes I wonder if they're right, I said quietly from the doorway. Maybe I am being too rigid about this. She looked up, surprised at my concession. Really? I sat beside her. No, not really. But I hate this division it's causing. Especially between us. She set her phone down. I don't like being caught in the middle. You're not in the middle, Rachel. You're my wife. We should be on the same side. But they're my family. And I'm your family too, I reminded her gently. Your primary family now. She was quiet for a long moment. You know what bothers me? It's not really about the car. It's that you don't seem to care how this is affecting me. That caught me off guard. What do you mean? My mom has called me crying twice this week. Kyle is apparently picking up extra shifts and walking over 2 miles to the bus stop at 2 a.m. because he can't afford rideshares every day. My dad barely speaks when I call. And all of this could be solved so easily. I felt a flare of frustration. So this is all on me? What about Kyle taking responsibility for once? What about your family respecting my decision instead of waging this emotional warfare? They see it as you not caring about Kyle's well-being. And I see it as them not caring about my legitimate concerns. Why is his need more important than my boundary? We stared at each other, at an impasse neither of us knew how to bridge. The following Tuesday, I was leaving work when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Tony, Kyle's boss at the sports bar. "Hey, Ethan, right? Kyle's brother-in-law. Listen, Kyle told me about the car situation, and I gotta say, I respect your position." I was momentarily speechless, having expected another guilt trip. Tony continued, "Kyle's a good bartender, but between us, he's not exactly Mr. Responsibility. Last month he showed up with a customer's credit card in his wallet that he'd accidentally taken home." "I didn't know that," I said carefully. "Yeah, well, it got sorted out. But listen, I've worked something out with him. My apartment's not far from the bar, and I've told him he can crash at my place on late nights until his car's fixed. Just wanted you to know so you don't feel bad about the whole thing. Sometimes standing your ground is the right call, family or not." After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long time, processing this unexpected validation, and the new information about Kyle that Rachel's family had conveniently omitted. That night, I shared Tony's call with Rachel. Her initial skepticism faded as I relayed the credit card incident. Why wouldn't Kyle tell us he had an arrangement with Tony, she wondered aloud. The answer seemed painfully obvious to me. Because the narrative of him suffering works better for putting pressure on us. Rachel was quiet for a long time. "I need to think about this," she finally said. The next morning, she called her mother while I was in the room, deliberately, I realized, so I could hear both sides of the conversation. "Mom, I need to ask you something. Did you know Kyle's boss offered to let him stay at his apartment on late nights?" There was a pause. "Well, yes, but that's not a permanent solution, honey." "But it solves the 2 a.m. safety issue you were so worried about," Rachel pressed. "Why didn't you mention that when you called me crying about how Ethan was putting Kyle in danger?" Another pause. "I didn't think it was relevant." Rachel's voice took on an edge I rarely heard. "And did you know about the customer's credit card Kyle took home from the bar last month?" A longer silence. "Kyle said that was a misunderstanding." "It seems like there are a lot of misunderstandings when it comes to Kyle," Rachel said pointedly. "I think I need to take a step back and look at this situation more objectively. Ethan's not being unreasonable, Mom. He's setting a boundary, and we need to respect that." When she hung up, she looked at me with new clarity. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "I should have supported you from the beginning." The fallout was not immediate, but it was significant. Kyle, realizing his leverage had evaporated, stopped his campaign of family manipulation. Rachel's parents maintained a cool distance for several weeks, but eventually, the allure of Sunday dinners and family normalcy overrode their disappointment. 3 weeks later, Kyle's car was indeed fixed, though he'd needed to contribute more to the repair than he'd initially let on, another detail that had been conspicuously omitted. As for Rachel and me, something fundamental had shifted. She'd seen a side of her family's dynamics that she couldn't unsee, and I'd learned that standing firm on reasonable boundaries didn't make me the villain, even when others tried to cast me in that role. "You know," Rachel said one evening as we watched the sunset from our patio, "you taught me something important through all this." "What's that?" "That real family supports each other's growth, not each other's weaknesses. Enabling isn't love." I squeezed her hand, feeling the distance between us these past weeks finally closing. "It took a lot of courage for you to see it," I told her. "Especially when it would have been easier not to." She smiled sadly. "I wonder how long we've all been enabling Kyle without realizing it." It was a question without an easy answer, but at least now it had been asked. And sometimes, asking the right question is the first step toward real change. As for my car, it remained my small sanctuary, a symbol not of material attachment as Rachel's family had painted it, but of hard work, personal responsibility, and the right to set healthy boundaries, even with those we love.